Hello artists, how are you? Welcome to this new video in which we're going to solve one of the questions that are asked to me the most, and that is, how many hours do I have to practice drawing every day in order to learn in the shortest time possible? Well, it's a very good question, and it has a lot to do with conscious learning, which I will now explain to you what that is. Regarding the question of how many hours we have to practice, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or as many as we can, we have to answer that with another question. How much progress do I make with what I do? How much do I learn? And it is that we should be drawing with maximum concentration to solve our problems and learn not to do things that only entertain us or don't contribute anything to us. When something goes well and we draw it all the time, it's because it comes out well and it gives us a good feeling. Or when something comes out wrong, we repeat it all the time because it came out wrong and we want to correct it. We're not getting anything. It's just repetition. It doesn't help us move forward. Let's imagine a climber who wants to climb a certain mountain and tries day after day but never succeeds. Well, what you have to do is stop trying to climb the same wall and analyze where the problem comes from. Because maybe it's that you lack strength in your hands, or you don't have enough resistance, or you have loose abdominals and cannot balance yourself when you're trying to climb. What you should be doing is getting more gym work, more cardio, or strengthening your abs. A little failure can weigh you down in your bigger goals. And just as that climber has no problem with that particular mountain, you have no problem with any particular drawing. And drawing for the sake of drawing, in a loop, always the same thing, it's not going to solve your problems. Especially if you're one of those who draw only what you do well, to avoid the feeling of frustration when you do something that you don't really master. What you should do is look for maximum concentration every time you draw, and don't draw on autopilot or laying in bed, listening to a podcast or watching TV. You can do that at any time, whether you feel like it, to relax, to enjoy a little bit of drawing, which is something you have to do, but you have to understand that this is not going to teach you practically anything. You have to start distinguishing between drawing for fun and drawing for learning. Drawing is not easy, otherwise everyone would draw well. It requires a lot of discipline and consistency. There are many famous phrases from musicians that talk about playing with your head instead of playing with your fingers, and it's a very accurate thing to say because, in fact, you should do the same thing when you're drawing. If you always draw the same things with the same strokes, the same proportions, in the same way, and with the same shading, you're not going to advance, you're just going to be stagnant. And the worst of all is that this will create a neutral pathway that will make your brain adapt to drawing in that way, which will make it much more difficult to learn another way. Sometimes, or rather usually, it's worse to learn with a bad method than it is to learn with no method at all. Because your brain, when faced with something new, starts to recruit neurons to make the procedure possible in a way that makes it easier, more automatic, and you don't have to think so much. On-thinking costs much more than unconscious action. Therefore, when the brain has already created that neutral pathway, when you already have a lot of neurons that are dedicated to doing an activity that you already know, changing it is difficult, and it will cost you a lot. The brain does not want to make these changes. It costs a lot of energy and effort, and you'll find that if you have learned to draw in the wrong way, when you try to do it in another way, your brain will not want to make that effort, and it will set all these traps it has at its disposal so you stop doing that activity and don't expend energy on it. Keep in mind that your brain thinks you're still living in the jungle or in a cave, and if you spend too much energy, you can die in the winter when you have no food. Human beings are made that way. Your brain will send you signals of laziness, self-deception, feelings of frustration, or that awful feeling of having to start again with something you've already done. I'm going to give you an example that I'm sure has happened to you at the office, at a university, at school, or any other activity. When you've done something and you have to repeat it, you have a horrible feeling. Even if you're not going to make an extra effort. If you work 10 hours a day in an office, you wouldn't really care if you were doing one thing or the other. But if the job goes wrong and you have to repeat it, that overwhelming feeling is horrible. It costs you a lot more if you had a new job, although it's really the same time and effort as you would with something different. You wouldn't be doing the exact same thing. You'd be doing exactly the same thing that you did every day, but you perceive it as something much worse. This is how the brain protects you from making a double effort for the same thing. It's something it doesn't like to do. Well, that's what's going to happen when you've learned to draw incorrectly, and you have to correct something, which is going to be much more difficult than if you start from scratch. I'll give you an example of what you could do by yourself in your room. Try to tie your shoelaces the wrong way. Do it wrong on purpose. Just try to do it. You'll see how hard it is because you've done it so many times in the same way. Your brain will not want to make a change, and I assure you that it will take you a long time to find a way to tie the laces that is not the way you're used to. That's if you dare to do this exercise, because probably your brain right now is sending signals not to do that in the form of laziness in every possible way, right? And now let's get to the number of hours you have to practice, which, of course, is going to vary from person to person, but you have to keep one thing in mind. If you ensure too many hours of practice when you're learning, it means that there's something you're not doing right. You're not being aware of whether you're learning to advance or you're just drawing on autopilot. If you draw 3 or 4 hours a day, including breaks, you should rest at least 15 minutes of each hour. That's 45 minutes of drawing for 15 minutes of resting, or 20 minutes of drawing for 5 minutes of resting, if you prefer to stop less time more frequently. It should be enough. The rest of the time you could draw for fun, what you feel like, what you do well, something like that. I don't know, something that motivates you or doesn't create so much tension. You don't have to give up enjoying what you do, but you do have to set some time every day to discipline yourself and do things that you don't really like because they require a lot of effort. Don't pay too much attention to what you do well or what you've already mastered, because that's just inflating your ego. What you have to do is be honest with yourself, see where you fail and practice it until you get it and make a plan to get it. Don't just start drawing hands obsessively. If hands don't come out, think about the reason why your hands don't come out. Why are you failing at it? In the line, in the anatomy, or the proportions, or maybe the shading? That's what will help you in advance, to study or practice in a conscious way. Because if you're consciously repeating the same thing, or if you draw all the time something that doesn't come out, you will always be creating a neutral pathway to do which in reality does not come out. And you'll create a routine from which will be very difficult to get out. As a reference, and of course this depends a lot on each kind of person, the ability to concentrate, the age, the experience with drawing, the achievements, motivation, etc. If you're drawing for more than an hour and you don't need to rest, you're probably doing something wrong. To give you an example, people who start in a class and draw something they've never done before, like drawing with a living model, drawing a real person in front of you, they feel it's exhausting. They all say it, that it looks like they've been in the gym for an hour, and it's true. It's something they've never done before. It's a way of concentrating very, very intensely, and also drawing someone who's working and making an effort for you, and wasting time or getting distracted seems disrespectful to the model. So the concentration is always at a maximum. Everyone feels it as something very intense. So remember, always try to concentrate as much as possible. Try to learn things that will really make you advance, and not just easy tricks, things that you copy or just makes you feel good because they come out easily. That's not going to be worth anything. Take frequent breaks, set yourself a schedule, and discipline yourself. Hydrate yourself well, and you will see how soon you will start to improve. And so people, that's today's video. If you enjoyed what you saw, I'd really appreciate it if you could like it, subscribe, and share the video. That's the way you could help me the most. And that's all for today, people. A big hug and see you here on this channel in the next video.